Hello again and welcome to the agenda. Now, Tselane, a former IEC commissioner, has raised concern about the challenges associated with holding elections essentially every 2 years. He's put forward a proposal to merge the local, provincial and national government elections into one single event in order to optimize on resource utilization, amongst other things. Now, the polls in South Africa have recently been concluded, and of course, we're waiting for this moment to be wrapped up, if you like, with the announcement of a new cabinet. For more on these thoughts, let's bring in Tselane, who joins us now via our video link. Great to have you on the program as always, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time. This is actually not a new proposal that you've put forward, and the last time that this was made public, there were all kinds of opinion pieces written in response to kind of speak about perhaps what the unintended consequences of merging the elections might be. But for the benefit of our viewer who's coming across this proposal for the first time, let us in on why you reckon having one large election that includes both local as well as provincial and government elections would work.
Good morning to you and to your viewers, and thank you very much for having me. Firstly, as you correctly pointed out, it is very costly to manage an election for both the fiscus as well as for political parties. You may be aware that quite a number of political parties have been spending a lot of resources just to be able to manage the past election. Now you can imagine that in a period of about 6 months, they're going to have to start now preparing to run another elections. And I think this is really getting much more difficult for the political parties. But also in terms of the fiscus, the Electoral Commission spends just over 2 billion rands to run an election. And they've just managed the elections, and again, they've got to start preparing for another elections in a few months' time, essentially. Now, what makes this even more important is that the current negotiations around the formation of coalition or national government of national unity begins to give impetus to this debate because, as you may be aware, that the political parties are not able to find each other at this stage. And for the next 6 months, there's going to be a lot of instability when the political parties are still trying to understand how they should be operating within this context. And then immediately when they try to find each other, it is going to be time for the elections to take place. And then they're going to have to start now campaigning against each other, whilst at the same time they're expected to be working together in a government of national unity. So this will put even much more strain on the capacity of government to be able to deliver to the people.
We know, according to the Constitution, that office bearers have to remain in their positions, whether at a local government level or nationally, for about 5 years. How will that transitionary period then work? Because it's either you'll have office bearers staying in these offices longer than the 5 years, or they might have to relinquish them before that time, if you know what I mean, if we are to get to a point where we align these timelines.
Well, there are two possibilities, but the first one that is going to be important is that the Constitution would have to be changed. As you correctly pointed out, that any government, whether it be national or provincial, has got a period of 5 years. Now, to combine this would mean that one of the elections, one of the spheres, in other words, would not actually complete, or their term would have to be extended. In this case, I'm thinking more in terms of local municipalities. So the two possibilities would be that either you extend the term of office of the municipalities after having changed the constitution in order for that term to coincide with the national and provincial elections, or alternatively you create some kind of interim mechanism at the municipal level, where again the same arrangement that you actually have at the national level, where you're trying to have government of national unity, to begin to create some kind of mechanism even at that level in order to have inclusive government, because in any case the mandate of those municipalities would have come to an end, and that would actually coincide with the process that is already underway in terms of getting government of national unity at national and provincial level.
And we know changing the constitution would need a 2/3 majority in parliament. I don't know how that's ever going to happen. But anyway, let's just continue with the building of the scenarios, as it were. An interesting point has been made about this, though. I mean, theoretically speaking, there are two different democracies that are at play when we have either a local government election or an election at a national government level. You know, for local governance, there are issues that come to the fore. In fact, many people talk about local government speaking about the matters that are at the coalface of service delivery: water, sanitation, the state of our roads, electricity provision, etc. At a national government level, it's more kind of policy-related issues that hopefully dominate discourse. The land question, for example, macroeconomic policy, and how we are to position South Africa's foreign policy stances, etc., etc. There are concerns that if we have these elections at the same time, you may very well find one democracy, if you like, eclipsing another. And that, for some people, isn't good for the greater story of how democracy ought to work. What's your response to that?
The issues in South Africa are intertwined. You can't separate local government issues from bigger national political issues. You may have seen in terms of how the political parties campaign that they don't separate the issues and say that now we're dealing with local government issues and then completely forget about the ideological and political framework that normally finds an expression and when you are having national and provincial elections. So you have a situation where, unfortunately, the issues of service delivery affects both national government as well as provincial government. So when it comes to campaigning, political parties do not separate those issues. They combine them. The issue of the land has been raised, for instance, by the EFF, even at the municipal level. So there has never been a situation in South Africa, largely because of the strategic challenges facing this country, where there is a Chinese wall between local government issues and national political issues. The two are the same and they impact on each other. And as a result of that, there has never been that separation, even in terms of the manifestos by different political parties.
Fair enough. We also know that at a local government level, there have been a number of grassroots organizations that have found resonance with their communities and, essentially morphed into political parties. Another concern that's raised with merging these elections is that those kinds of organizations have a lesser chance at making it because, frankly, people are dealing with a whole lot more on their plates. Like, for example, a voter in Alexandra, for example, is so focused on who's likely to be the president and the premier of the place where they live, and they don't necessarily focus on which organization is best placed to respond to their needs in their specific community. I mean, how would we make sure that those new entrants aren't disadvantaged? Because, frankly, the voter has so much to consider.
I think local based organizations will have an opportunity because, remember, as you correctly pointed out, they are campaigning at the local level, and then therefore they can actually be able to use the hype that will have been created by having all these elections in 1 day or 2 days, making sure that they can actually be able to elevate their campaign at the local level about issues that affect communities at the local level. So I think instead of actually suppressing the campaigns of locally based organizations, the hype that will be created might actually assist in terms of highlighting their importance, and they will also be able to piggyback on bigger political issues to highlight the issues that affect communities at the local level.
The IEC has had a fair share of troubles just organizing this past election, and it didn't have to deal with local government issues. In my mind, merging these elections would create a much larger task. And I wonder if you reckon, the body in its current form, perhaps with its current challenges, would be able to actually pull off what you're proposing.
Well, it is my considered opinion, really, that they should provide the Commission sufficient time to be able to refine its system. But I think it would also give them sufficient opportunity to focus on voter education processes. In the last election, as you indicated, it was difficult for people to understand just 3 ballot papers. And the reason why it was difficult, it was because there wasn't really sufficient vote education. I think the Commission decided to spend most of its time, and correctly so, on its resources rather, on management of the logistics of the elections. And that gap was supposed to have been occupied by the civil society organizations and the political parties. And unfortunately, the political parties, as well as the civil society organization, did not do much in terms of educating people about the electoral processes. And I think if we combine the elections, there will be sufficient resources, even for the Commission, to begin to focus on voter education, to make sure that people understand. But at the same time, it would also allow them an opportunity to refine their processes to make sure that we do not have the kind of the challenges that we had with this past election. They will have enough time if, for instance, local government elections are postponed with another 2 years to make sure that they coincide with national provincial elections. And they will use that time to refine the system to make sure that we do not have the kind of those difficulties that they experienced during the past elections.
It's an interesting proposal and, of course, has a number of considerations to be made. Tselane, as always, it's lovely speaking to you. Thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us. A proposal that perhaps we should move towards merging the elections in this country in order to have, hopefully, a whole lot more of a seamless democratic process unfold. Tselane wears a number of caps, of course, but speaks to us now as a former commissioner of the IEC.